I just find it too coincidental that Wendy called the police about Donnie's suicidal tendencies right before she found him dead from a supposed suicide at the back of the head with someone else's gun, and the person who owned the gun can never be found. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to True Crime Unsolved. This is the place where we tackle the stories that the TV networks won't touch. Guys, today we're getting into another comment reaction video. We've gotten such an outpouring of support and comments in the last couple of cases that we've posted up about. So we want to go through some of that, mostly on the news stuff. Sean, before we get into it, any channel news that we need to get into yet?
Nothing particular. No, I mean, things are going well. You know, we had a new case come out on Friday, which is the Brittney Wood case. That's a case I think that if you guys haven't seen it yet, is a little it was a tricky one to talk about, right? It was dark. It had a lot of elements to it that are really difficult, I think, even to just talk about on the YouTube algorithm, right? It's like really, really transgressive kind of material, but it's doing really well. And seeing people's reaction to it and the sort of overall sentiment that it's a story worth telling, even with those uncomfortable elements, has been cool. And we're going to dive into that in a minute by reading some of your guys' comments. But other than that, yeah, like we keep teasing, we've got some fun announcements coming. Not this week, guys. Sorry. Probably next week, I think, is the week you're going to hear some cool stuff from us. But stay tuned for that. Other than that, I'm just excited to read some good comments.
Yeah, and also just adding to what you just said, that I think just seeing how our audience has reacted to all the stuff that we've put up on the Tiffany Witten case has been really, really nice because I think you guys see the struggles that that young woman had, and the fact that her family does deserve justice, and that she does too. It's really, really nice to see that, and I haven't really seen a lot of negative stuff on our channel of anyone, disparaging her or talking about her lifestyle in a negative way or anything like that. So we really, really appreciate that. And it just makes us feel good about the people that are watching what we're doing.
Yeah, well said. Shall we dive in?
Let's do it. Our old friend, KG Penguin. What's up,
Yes.
KG Penguin? Thanks for the support. Thanks for the comment. Um, So this is about Brittney Wood. This case is just so sad. What a horrible situation Brittney was in. There are so many questions in this case. In my opinion, Donnie used a ruse to get Brittney in the car with him. I think Wendy was going to meet him and they were going to get rid of Brittney. But maybe Wendy's plan was to get rid of both of them. That would help Wendy out. If one is dead and the other disappears. I just find it too coincidental that Wendy called the police about Donnie's suicidal tendencies right before she found him dead from a supposed suicide at the back of the head with someone else's gun, and the person who owned the gun can never be found. I mean, yeah, you make a really, really good case there. Everything that you've said obviously is, lines up with the facts of the case. She did, report that he was being suicidal. The gun was not his. Yeah, what you don't mention is that even that the wound is in a strange place, and that not everybody's even sure that that could have been a suicide by where the gunshot wounds are in the back of Donnie's head. So, yeah, I agree, KG Penguin. It all seems very strange, and the theory that you lay out seems quite plausible.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're not the only one thinking that, I think, as a possibility here. I was thinking about this case actually yesterday, and something came to my mind that we didn't really talk about on our breakdown, but maybe this is a good opportunity, which is just the idea of the gun used in this, which was supposedly Brittany's gun, according to her family and the people that knew her. That gun belonged to her. I don't think that it was ever definitively traced via like serial numbers and paperwork, but people in the know said that was Brittany's gun. Well, if Donnie is the guy who uses this gun to kill himself, it just is really odd, right? Because, I'm going to do a little bit of sort of generalizing here, but this is a guy from Alabama. This is a guy with one look at his picture. We can put it up here. This guy probably owns a couple guns or is at least pretty familiar with them. If I'm wrong about that, I'll eat my hat. I could be, of course, wrong, but I would bet this guy knows his way around firearms.
But we know that's true just from anecdotally speaking to people. I don't think,
Yeah.
Sean's not saying this from a place of like stereotyping. I mean, we've
No.
talked to people. The guy was familiar with firearms. It's part of the
Yes.
culture.
Yeah, this is where he comes from, and this is part of the culture, and people have said this about him. And so I'm not just going off of a physical description, although maybe that adds to the picture as well. But so what I'm driving at here is that is a really poor choice of a gun to shoot yourself in the head with. I think it was a 25 caliber, handgun. It would stand to reason that this guy, if he was suicidal, probably had access to other more appropriate firearms if that was his plan that day. I would think that's a really hard way to do it. And the fact that he survived for 3 days after shooting himself in the head, if that's indeed what happened, just goes to show what a poor choice that would have been, right? Like the point of shooting yourself in the head probably is that you want it to be over quickly, one would think. And that's not what happened in this case. So it does start to, make me wonder, would a guy like that really make such a poor choice when other choices were available? And if not, well, then is he the one that did it, right? Is he really the guy that used that gun for that purpose, or was it somebody else?
Right.
So I think that that fits into what you're saying here, KG Penguin. Maybe the people handling guns and shooting other people that day are not the same as what is sort of on the official record right now. It could be that there were others involved. Was it Brittney? Was it Wendy with Brittney's gun, right? Was it somebody else with Brittney's gun? Or was it actually Donnie with Brittney's gun? In which case, where's Brittney, right? So there's just a lot of strangeness around that whole thing. It's the gun used, it's the back of the head, makes no sense. I mean, in any situation like that, that's not typically where people choose to aim, um, unless it's somebody else. So yeah, I think everything you bring up here, it's funny because it just fits into something I was thinking about with this case yesterday.
What's that?
Well, what I just laid out,
Oh,
sorry, sorry, yeah.
you just pause like,
Let me take it
um,
again. Let
no,
me
no,
finish.
no. I got you. But look, anything's possible, right? We could go on and speculate, and that's sort of like not the business that Sean and I are in, as you guys know, and we do a little bit more of that when we're, sort of responding to the comments because it's based on you guys coming up with theories, and we're kind of bouncing them back and forth. Did Brittany confront Donnie about the cousin and all the horrible stuff and got in his head so bad and then handed him a gun and said, do the right thing, and then walked off into the sunset and disappeared? I don't know. Seems
Right.
really far-fetched,
Like the mafia type situation
but that's a
there.
possible theory, right? Like, maybe she just like emotionally like destroyed him in that car and he was facing, the cops, later that day and he was just like, yeah, give me your gun. But I think that's a fairly odd and far-fetched, theory. What KG Penguin lays out here seems a lot more tied to the facts and a lot more obvious. And usually the obvious thing is the truth, right? Like when you start having to build out all these scenarios and these what ifs, that's usually not what happened in my experience, just from seeing like tons and tons of cases over the years. So, but anything's possible, right? Anything's possible. Maybe Donnie got a hold of her gun, did it himself. Who knows? But I do think that what KG Penguin here has laid out is what a lot of people are thinking. And obviously the cops felt that Wendy was extremely guilty for a lot of things because she went away. She got the harshest sentence of anybody in this entire case. Well, in the related sex trafficking case, I should say.
Yeah, and I mean, you just have to back out for a minute here and look at the two people who disappeared from society that day, right? Donnie and Brittany. Both of them had a lot of knowledge about this huge trafficking ring that later got busted, and all these people went to prison for life. It destroyed everybody. And so those two people going away, I mean, Donnie was about to talk to the police, and Brittany had a lot of information about this ring and had apparently also been talking to the police. And so you just kind of have to look at it like that and wonder, why would those two people disappear? Is it really just an accident or a coincidence that Brittany vanishes into thin air and Donnie decides to shoot himself that day? Or is there maybe an understandable motivation for why somebody else might not want these two people around anymore? And I think that that's what KG Penguin's getting at here, and anybody who spends more than 15 minutes with this case starts to think along those lines too.
Right. I mean, there's extreme motive here, extreme motive. Whereas there's other cases that we're looking at, and that we've had conversations with you guys about that, like the lack of motive is the problem, or not being able to find one with the solid motive to do something like this. But there's a very obvious motive to, as Sean said, get rid of both of these people, because what happened soon after this, speaks to that.
Right on. Well, let's move on. That was a great comment, KG Penguin. As usual, you've given us quite a bit to chew on, so thank you for that one. This is CB24203. They say great content as always. Thank you. The cases that involve abuse, like this one, meaning Brittany's, are the ones that need attention most. Also, not related, but we would love to see you guys cover the Dermond murders at Lake Oconee. I hope I pronounced that right. Incredibly bizarre case that needs solving and would generate a good amount of conversation here. There are multiple people who would definitely speak with you. The sheriff even said he'll talk to anyone at any time about this case. So, let me take it from the beginning because you kind of split this into two thoughts, and then we'll come back to that case. So you said the cases that involve abuse, like Brittany's, are the ones that need attention most. Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think we touched on it in our case breakdown, but Brittany's was a little bit tough for Myles and I when we were deciding whether to do it because there's so much heinous talk about, sexual abuse, just to be blunt about it, and stuff that is very a trigger warning kind of material that it's not the kind of case that everybody has the sort of intestinal fortitude to want to sit and listen to. It's really ugly. But that was our decision ultimately, is kind of what you're saying. Brittany deserves it. Brittany should not have her missing persons case sort of buried or ignored simply because the circumstances of her life that she didn't choose and had nothing to do with outside of being victimized are ugly. And so we decided to talk about it and we talked to her stepmom about it. That's coming out this week. So yeah, I'm glad that you guys are seeing the reasoning in that whole decision because it was not fun to discuss that. It was not fun to learn about that. And I think for you guys, it might not be necessarily fun to hear about it, but it is maybe important, in understanding what happened here. And if we're going to find answers for Brittany and for her family and for her kid, unfortunately, we got to go through that. We have to kind of walk through that dark tunnel together, and hopefully, at the other end of it, we get some answers on this. So, thanks for letting us know that you guys are on the same page.
Well, and there's people willing to talk about it who are directly involved that want justice, and I think that for me, and I think for you too, Sean, that's ultimately the motivating factor is like there's people who need answers and they need a platform, and that's what we're doing here, right? So, you know, it's not like we're just doing it for salacious reasons, like, ooh, this is a really crazy case. Let's talk about sex trafficking, right?
Yeah,
We
quite
actually
the opposite.
yeah, we were really careful about that. By the way, CB24203, thanks for the comment as always. I am reading about the Derman murders at Lake Oconee right now, and I had never heard of this case. This is really crazy. We'll definitely look into it.
I love the idea that there's a sheriff who will talk to anyone at any time about the case. That is definitely bodes well for what we're trying to do.
Salty Temptations.
That's
Brittany went missing from my hometown. Thank you for covering this case. I pray she's found and brought home. I have a binder full of documentation from this case. I have searched for Brittany for several years. I've spoken to several people, and I, as many others, received death threats from Brittany's mother and stepfather prior to her death a few weeks ago. This case has several twists and turns. Brittany knew too much. She was about to expose the whole sex ring, and they needed to silence her. Same with Donnie. If he had murdered Brittany, then turned the gun on himself, she would have been found near him. True. They would have found more than just the battery to her cell phone in his vehicle. Her phone has never been recovered. Also true, the entry wound to his head was in the back of his head, not normally where one would be from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. True. Not to mention the wooded area he was found in isn't visible from the main road, and it's ironic Wendy finds him right after he supposedly shot himself a few hours prior to when he was supposed to meet with the detective. Some of the characters involved in this have changed their stories several times. The family that had everything to lose is 100% involved in Brittany's disappearance, in my opinion. Salty Temptations, I'm very curious, what your relationship to Brittany and the family and everything is, because it sounds like you have some sort of intimate, experience up close. So I'm assuming that you actually live in the area, which you said she was from your hometown. I'm assuming you're still there, and your binder full of documentation and searching for Brittany. Very, very curious to know more about that.
in general, I think this is just kind of piggybacking almost on what we were just talking about with KG Penguin's comment. I mean, there's people out there who had a lot to lose if Donnie spoke to the police and if Brittany cooperated. I mean, that's two really intimately involved people in this family who know where all the bodies are buried, so to speak, skeletons in the closet, however you want to put it. You can see how people, who would be going to prison for life and being, publicly humiliated when all their crimes are dragged in front of a jury, wouldn't want these people talking. So, yeah, I think that's the running theory. I'm just going to say that for a lot of people, it's hard to get past that.
Agreed. Agreed.
Can I also just say really quickly, I really like the username Salty Temptations. I immediately thought of like, does this person run like a nut shop, like in a or something like that? It sounds like a place where you would go pick up a treat. So I like it.
Like a Christmassy kind of shop with like
Yeah, like at a ski
salted
resort.
nuts and
Yeah, you go in there,
chocolate
they've
covered
got
pretzels.
the little like Christmas tins with like
Hmm.
bows around them full of like
Yeah,
salty treats for
you
the
get the paper
holidays.
bag and like fill it up with what you want.
Exactly. Salty Temp.
Oh, that makes me feel all warm inside.
Yeah, we could use it on this one.
Yeah.
You want me to take this next one?
Yeah, so we're gonna move on to comments on the Marcy and Josh, who were Liz Barraza's good friends from the 501st. Comments that we got on that vid.
Right. So this is Emily Brennan, 4537. She says, I'm a socially awkward nerd. And as far as the discussion at 117, no, the positive, outgoing, but kind people are not resented. Earlier in the video, Marcy talks about how Liz made a point to include everyone and not ostracize anyone. Those people are totally loved by us awkward social outcast nerds. Yeah, I think what she is maybe alluding to is the theory that's come up a couple times where we were wondering like, is there someone there who was sort of rubbed the wrong way by Liz's outgoingness and kindness, and is there like a sort of a dark personality who would see a positive personality and not like it? And she's saying, look, I'm a socially awkward nerd, and as far as that stuff goes, no, people like me love people like Liz. I would like to believe that. I hope that's true. I mean, it certainly seems to be for normal people. Um, and yeah, I mean, I don't think that just by nature, positive people and quiet people can't get along. I think they get along most of the time. I think Liz's case is just so strange that we're like reaching now into these more bizarre realms for answers. It's like maybe there's somebody who's just quietly resenting her for God knows what reason, and it's their own problem, right? It's something that's wrong with them, not just like I'm shy and she's not. I don't like her. Something weirder than that, but their shyness would be maybe the reason we haven't noticed them yet because no one's looking at this person. I think that's kind of more what we meant. But yeah, otherwise, I love this. It just seems like a pretty positive comment, right? Like
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe we've been presenting this in the wrong way as far as like I don't think that a person's social awkwardness or their quote unquote nerd factor, any of us think that that would be the reason that someone would resent Liz. I think it's just like a dark personality type that may have been part of a subculture that was gatekeeping said subculture and has, obviously serious personality defects in order to be able to do, what happened to Liz. So it's not saying that like nerd culture is full of resentful, mean people. I don't think that at all. But, you do run into people sometimes in scenes, any kind of scenes, who are really protective of said scenes and who, have a chip on their shoulder. And anyone who's sort of like been a part of a scene or a subculture has experienced this, and I've done it and I've been in it and I've experienced it firsthand. So I think that's all we're saying, and not we're definitely not throwing shade at the nerd culture, and we're not saying that we think that that certain subset of society is filled with angry, potentially murderous people, because in no way is that what Sean and I believe.
Not at all.
Emily, thank you for the comment, and keep being you, and and thank you for supporting us, and sorry if we haven't sort of presented that in the right way, because we would never want to ostracize anybody. David Lynch Owls says, why shouldn't friends be polygraphed? It seems like you guys think it's mean or unsupportive to bring that up. A woman was murdered and a killer is still out there. If they have nothing to hide, it would be no problem. I believe this was posted on our last comment reaction video where people were speaking about Marcy and Josh, right?
Hmm. Yes.
I don't remember us specifically saying that we didn't think that they should be polygraphed. Is that something that you remember, Sean?
I think what we said, because I did go back and just quickly scan through that video to just make sure we understood what this was about. What I had said in that video was it was cool that Marcy and Josh came on our show because they must have known that by doing so they were opening themselves up to the YouTube comment section where people are going to say, "Hey, who are those two? Has anybody talked to them? Have they been polygraphed?" And then we moved on. But I didn't say they shouldn't be polygraphed or they're immune from anything like that. In fact. I mean, I don't think they've been polygraphed, but maybe they have. And if the police wanted to, Miles and I would certainly not, have a problem with it. I think, if that investigation led to the point where it seemed like anybody in Liz's life needed to take a lie detector test, they should, right? It just seems like it hasn't led to the door of Marcy and Josh yet. I don't really know if they've had to provide alibis or anything like that. It just seems like they've never really been considered suspects. And
Right.
so, you know, the
I
way that
have to.
investigate
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I
Finish
was
up.
going to say the way that investigations typically work is like you kind of follow the path of clues, right? And if the clues aren't kind of leading to them, then I don't think the detectives would bother. It's not like let's find everyone Liz ever talked to, bring them in and spend, 5 hours polygraphing them. Maybe it'll get there. It's a pretty troubling case, and I don't think that these two would have a problem with that. They're very forthcoming and kind, and they loved Liz very much, and that is clear. So, yeah, no, I don't think it would be mean. I think more what I was saying was anytime you go on YouTube, right, and there's a case like this with a lot of public attention, and you're going to bother to give an interview, you know that you're going to be part of this conversation now where everyone has their pet theories, and you may become part of those pet theories. That's all I was saying. And from this comment, I can tell that it's true. I mean, it kind of proves it.
Right. And not to say that not to say that David Lynch Owl is saying, "Oh, I think they did it,"
No.
but it's just sort of more of like a thought experiment of like, you know, should the friends, be under scrutiny and should they be polygraphed? And yeah, like Sean said, I think anybody who's under suspicion should be looked at. I will say, having spent a lot of time, speaking with Marcy and Josh, not just, in the long video that you guys saw, but also, offline. I don't think that they're speaking to Sean and myself, who, get like 15 to 30,000 views on a video right now to try and like spread misinformation that they're innocent. Like I don't think they're sort of like stepping into the spotlight to talk to us on our YouTube channel to cover themselves. I think they genuinely cared about Liz and wanted to help in any way that they could.
Yeah, and actually, just a little bit more context while you bring that up, just in case other people are wondering about this whole thing. Marcy and Josh weren't even the ones that approached us. It was Liz's parents who asked us to speak to them because they really love Marcy and Josh, and they said, if you're going to talk to us, that's great. We're her family, but we have some people who were good friends with her who we adore and we stay in touch with, and we'd love if you guys are interested to talk to them. And we said, absolutely, let's talk to them. So it wasn't like, these are two people knocking down our door to get, to like kind of control their version of the story. Far from it. It was really kind of the opposite. I think they were minding their own business and we got connected with them through Liz's family. So I don't know if that helps anybody sort of understand how that whole thing came about, but maybe it's worth pointing that out.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. You want to take this next one?
Sure. So this is from our old friend Palacio, Texas Beauty 2872. Welcome back to the comments. She says, "Hi guys, I'd love you two to look at the AJ Armstrong case because he was just approved for another trial from the appeals court. In my opinion, he's guilty of killing his mom and dad while they slept in bed. The dad was an NFL football player. Check out the case. It happened in Houston." Wow. I'm not familiar with that one. That sounds very intriguing. What do you think, Miles?
I've read a little bit about the case actually, and it seems like it was actually a slip up on the judge's part that they didn't give an appeals trial earlier, and now they're being forced to do that before January. And it sounds like the prosecutors are very strongly of the mind that the jury made the decision and that they do believe that he was guilty, and they're going to do everything they can to keep him locked up. It's something interesting to keep an eye on. Yeah, it's a crazy case. I don't know if there's any family out there who would talk to us, but it's worth looking into. I mean, it's a pretty bizarre case, and I the little bit that I have looked into it, I don't there's doesn't seem to be any motive that's come out.
It would be an interesting one for us because it sounds like in the eyes of the law, or at least in the eyes of the state, this one is solved. It's more of an appeals, like an interesting appeals process where maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But it sounds like if he's appealing this, it sounds like he's already been convicted of it once. That sounds interesting. I mean, I don't think, that's not necessarily off brand, if there's really questionable outcomes, which I think we've covered and maybe covering more of those in the future. Just, maybe there's an official story, but no one's really buying it. That does feel like something we would be interested in talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thanks, Palacio, Texas. It's good to see you again. Um, ABCW114, how are you? I'm really enjoying that the cases you've covered are part of an extended discussion among you both, the audience and the guests. Liz Barraza, Jennifer Kessie, Chance Engelbert, etc. We keep saying their names because they matter. They're not just a news segment. I wish this were more common in true crime. Wow. Thank you, ABCW, and thanks for always supporting us. I mean, that is, sort of the model that Sean and I wanted to follow was that we weren't going to just like do sort of like a breakdown of something and talk about it and you know sort of like have a conversation amongst ourselves about it. We wanted to bring in other people that were related to these cases. We wanted to have extended conversations, as you're saying, where we're adding to it as more people want to talk and keeping it going in these comment videos. I'm really, really glad that you guys are seeing that and that you're enjoying it because we are trying to do something a little different in obviously a space of true crime that is really, really crowded, and there's a lot of great content creators out there. And so we're really grateful that we have an audience now and that it happened so quick and that you guys are connecting with what we're doing. So thank you.
Yeah, I think, for us, it was kind of an interesting gamble because we wanted to do multiple interviews with different people connected to the same case and also case breakdowns. And so you're looking at potentially 5 or 6, episodes all about one case. And for a YouTube channel that releases one episode, one big episode a week, that's a lot of time to ask people to pay attention to one case. And so we've kind of come up with this thing where we're juggling them, right? Liz Barraza this week, maybe next week we'll talk about Jennifer and Chance after that, but then we'll come back to Liz, right? Because we want to not let her fade any more than the other ones. And so it's led to this kind of funny juggling act that we're doing with all these cases where we revisit, we move to new ones, we go to the comments, we talk about old ones, we talk about new ones. And the good news is that it seems to be working really well. I mean, it's fun for us to talk week after week about all these different cases, even though we might have put up our case breakdown months ago at this point. So yeah, thank you for seeing that just keeping these stories alive and in the discussion is part of the mission, and it's part of why people talk to us to begin with, because they want attention, they want their loved ones' names on people's minds. So yeah, I love it. I love that you guys are like getting the mission, because you could also be saying, "Oh my God, really 6 episodes on this one case? Like, let's move on." But we haven't heard that once. So
Well, listen, guys, thanks for sticking around. Uh, Leave some comments on the comments, and we will respond to those next week. What do we have coming up this Friday?
we've got Stephanie Hankey. So that is Brittney Wood's stepmother, who has been a huge advocate for her. It's an interesting thing because so many people in Brittney's family were involved in the now infamous trafficking ring, that her stepmom, Stephanie Hankey, is the person who has stepped forward and has been carrying the torch for Brittney ever since 2012 when she first disappeared. So awesome interview, really wonderful person, and she was just full of information and really great to talk to. So check that out on Friday. Then the next week after that, we've got big news and big announcements coming. We've got more cases coming in December, all the way through the new year. We have actually an astounding amount of content coming your way. Myles and I have a lot of work to do to catch up on cutting it all and getting it ready for you. But yeah, stay tuned. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe and like this. And as always, we'll see you in the comments next week.
Thanks, everybody.